Okay.
Whatever.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. My topic was, I'm Winston, by the way. My topic was food regulation in the EU as compared to the US. So I just looked into some basic areas of food regulation in both, and then I have some conclusions at the end. Food regulation in the US. In the United States, the regulation of food and safety falls under two agencies, mainly the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, and the US Department of Agriculture. The FDA, Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, has jurisdiction over all food except for meat, poultry, and eggs, which falls under the Food Safety and Inspection Service. But each state also has public health officials that oversee the labeling, safety, and advertising of food. Safety in the U.S. The incidence of foodborne illness in the U.S. has held steady for the past several years, but there was an incident a few years ago with contaminated pet food, which in turn prompted the Food Protection Plan in 2007, which recommends that the FDA be given additional statutory authority to require preventative controls for high-risk foods, etc., and issue mandatory recalls to gain more access to records during emergencies. Labeling in the U.S. Under federal law, the claim that food is intended to diagnose, cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent disease makes that food or drug disease makes it. It's unlawful to say that, but there is a law that says the FDA can provide a health claim if it's supported by sufficient scientific evidence. International activities in the U.S. over the last 20 years, the international issues bearing on the safety, quality, and labeling of FDA-regulated foods have become increasingly important to the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition. During that period, the volume and variety of food products increased, and as a result, the border inspection policies and monitoring approaches that the FDA had pretty much no longer became effective. And this has created, now they're creating new strategies to import foods that complement the FDA's traditional enforcement approaches. Food regulation in the EU. It's a little different from in the US because pretty much it's not as set in stone, it's not as cohesive there. Pretty much their food law aims at ensuring a high level of protection of human life and health. At both the national and EU level, it establishes the rights of consumers to safe food and accurate and honest information. But it also aims to harmonize existing national requirements with the free movement of food and feed in the EU, which is that's their main goal. So they're trying to make everything safe, but they're also trying to make it so that food can move freely between different member states in the EU. They do have the European Food and Safety Authority, which provides scientific evidence and technical support in all areas impacting food safety. It constitutes an independent source of information on all matters in this field and ensures that the general public is kept informed, but participation in the authority is open to member states of the European Union and to other countries applying to EU food safety. Labeling in the European Union, labeling of foodstuffs to enable European consumers to get comprehensive information on the contents and the composition of food products, and it helps consumers make informed choices when purchasing their food. And the EU also has the Farm to Fork policy, which traces the different stages of the food chain system and examines the practices and procedures that ensure the safety of food. Those are my sources that I use. But pretty much the conclusion that I drew was that the EU can't have as concrete of a system as the FDA, since part of what they're trying to do is make it so that food can move freely between different member states, but also be safe. So they do have a good program in place, and they do have a bunch of statutes and other regulations that they came up with. But whereas in the U.S. it's different because since the U.S. is one nation, one entity, we can control more what comes in and goes out rather than having to harmonize all that with the laws and regulations of different states themselves. That's pretty much.
Thank you. Okay, well, give it a round.